Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Thursday, May the 2nd. We are live. We're back live tonight. I apologize for last night. You know, they say that acts of God and stuff like that are not covered by insurance in some places, but last night we got knocked off the air right in the about 20 minutes left to go in the show. We had a big storm came through Lubbock, and I just when we went to the break on the radio, I actually checked my weather forecast to kind of see what was going on, because someone told me we were on a tornado watch, and with all the tornadoes going on in the world, I thought I might check it out and just see what was going on. And then just a few minutes after that, man, we were poof, it was all gone. So, that stuff happens. Sometimes we have to deal with storms, and we just roll with it, right? We just adapt. We move along. We just get back on the show, get back on the road tomorrow, and that's what we did. And today is tomorrow, and there ought to be a country song made out of that somewhere. I bet you today is tomorrow. So I bet you there's already one. But yeah, so we're back. We're back live. We're on it. We're on the radio, 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio, 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation, 987radio.com. All your places, live 365. We're on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. And we're on X if you want to find us. And I know you do, because of those of you who watch the show, I know you want to find us. And maybe you could tell a friend about us sometime. And, apparently, if you like the show or something like that, I get more views. I don't do this to become a social media influencer, but I probably wouldn't hurt anybody's health, probably make the world a better place if more people knew about the show. So if you guys feel like it, send us a like or a smiley face or some sort of comment or something on there that gives us some street cred out there. And last night we were talking about two books. We were talking about Grain Brain and Brain Maker by Dr. David Perlmutter, and these are older books, 2013 and 2015 or 16, I believe, were the copyrights on these books. But I've learned a lot from Dr. Perlmutter over the years. He's a neurologist. He's an MD, board-certified neurologist, and a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. He's the recipient of the Linus Pauling Award and the author of the #1 New York Times best-selling Grain Brain, as well as the Grain Brain Cookbook, the Better Brain Book, and Raise a Smarter Child by Kindergarten. He lives and practices in Naples, Florida. So I appreciate him. A lot of other people appreciate him too. And we were breaking down his book last night, and so we got cut off. And there's a couple pieces of that book that I want to go back to tonight and talk about. I want to share some of his thoughts with you, so that maybe you could have a better chance to keep yourself healthier. But before we get into that, there were some common themes that ran through my day, and so I just want to share those themes with you, because these are like, just like the diabetes theme that we talked about. We'll talk about a little bit about that tonight. The diabetes theme keeps running through our society every single day. Well, there's another theme that keeps running through my society, or through my office, that I've had to have the same conversation about multiple times. And it's just super important to understand the mechanism between the difference between a disc bulge and a facet jamming problem. Now, there's multiple reasons that you can have low back pain. And you know me, I'm a wellness guy, right? But part of wellness, sometimes you got to deal with some pain. That you can't ignore people's pain, because you have wellness people who work in the yard, or spend too much time gardening and all that sort of thing. Maybe you help somebody move this weekend, or something. You got into some sort of thing, and one of the things that happens to us is we become unconditioned. And what I mean by that is you literally have a neurology and a physiology that goes along with being conditioned to do a certain physical movement. And if you're not conditioned to do that movement, it doesn't mean that you're not conditioned to do what you do on a daily basis, but it could mean that you're number one, you're the efficiency of your neurology, the way that your body and your brain communicate with each other, may be decreased. You may have lost a little bit of your neurological efficiency. And what I mean by that, let's say you sit at a desk and you work on a computer all day long. But then this weekend you decide, hey, I'm going to completely clean out the flower bed like I did a couple weeks ago. And you got to pull up all the rose bushes. You got 5 dead or virus infected rose bushes. You got a bunch of Indian hawthorns that died. You got a bunch of roots. And if you've ever pulled up a rose bush, you understand that's an amazing plant. Man, you talk about, that's probably one of the most amazing plants I've ever seen in my life. Like, so beautiful and will stick you like crazy. And then when you get down into the root system of a rose, man, I couldn't even find the end of that root. There's no telling where the next rose bush will grow in my flower bed, because I pulled that dude up 5-6 feet away from the original place of that rose, and still was finding a rose bush out there. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not conditioned, even though I do CrossFit style workouts twice a week, and even though I can see patients all day long, my body's not conditioned to work in a flower bed. And so even though I'm a wellness guy, even though I haven't had a piece of bread in over 2 years and 2 months, even though I haven't had a bowl of ice cream in 2 years and 2 months, even though I take my fish oil and my vitamin D and I get adjusted every Tuesday from my awesome chiropractor at Grassroots Chiropractic named Derek Carson, if just because I'm a wellness guy doesn't mean that I can't get myself into a position to where I bulge a disc or create some sort of facet jamming or do some sort of pain problem, right? So it doesn't make me a pain management guy to talk about pain issues on the radio. And I'm just saying that for myself more than I'm saying it for you, because you don't really care one way or the other. But there's like 3 chiropractors out there that might see this and they'll be like, why is he talking about pain? So, but there's a big difference between a disc bulge, disc herniation that you might have heard of, and a facet that's on the back of the vertebrae. The vertebrae kind of grows. You've all seen what a vertebrae looks like. If you haven't, you can Google it, but it kind of looks like a little rectangle when you look at it from the side. And then in between each vertebrae, there's a disc. And in the middle of that disc is a fluid type substance, and that's called the nucleus. And the outside of the disc is a kind of a thick cartilage type substance. I always think of it as like if you took 2 little felt pads, and hot glued them together, made them in a circle, take a little felt pad, make a circle out of it, take another little felt pad, make a circle out of it, and then hot glue those 2 pads together. That would be like the annulus, the outer shell of the disc. And then inside the middle of that disc is a fluid-filled type substance called the nucleus. And that's what your disc is made of. And your disc is connected. It's connected to the vertebrae above it and the vertebrae below it. So that disc, all the way around the rim of that vertebrae, that disc grows up like root systems into that into the end of that vertebrae right there. And so it's all the way sealed all the way around in a circle on the top, and sealed all the way around in a circle on the bottom. And then it's kind of squishy in between. It's kind of like your shock absorber that's in between your vertebrae. And then that fluid that's in the middle of it is what is supposed to stay in the middle of it. And fluid is not compressible, right? You do a belly flop into a swimming pool, it hurts because fluid's not compressible. So that fluid kind of keeps the vertebrae split apart so that it doesn't bulge. But sometimes what happens is we get into a situation where we're in flexion or we're in lateral bending, meaning we either lose our core strength and we bend ourselves forward where we bend the vertebrae forward and it pinches down on the disc and it pushes, because we're pressing forward on it, it pushes the nucleus out the back of the disc. And it starts to put pressure on that annulus that's at the back towards the spinal cord. And that pressure is what ends up causing that nucleus to do this right here. Let me move this dude in just a little bit and see what happens. See if I could show you this. So you guys that are watching this, this thing is. See if I can get my camera a little bit better here for you guys that are watching the show this way. But so maybe this makes a little bit more sense to you. When you lean forward, you push on the front of the disc. And when you push on the front of the disc, then you push the disc out the back. And it's going to find a little pinhole in that annulus, that felt pad. It's going to find a little pinhole and it's going to start working itself around from the back. And when that happens, that's going to start to cause that annulus to bulge and it's going to hit that nerve. Now, the first thing it's going to hit is it's going to hit the outside 1/3 of that disc, which has nerve innervation. You've got nerves that are inside the outside of 1/3 of that disc. And that's the first thing that it's going to do is interfere with those nerves. And you're going to get pain in your back that is not quite radiating yet. It's localized to one spot. You're going to say, oh, my back hurts. And every time I bend forward, it hurts again. And that's what's going on when you have a disc. Now, if you keep bulging that disc, you keep pushing that nucleus backward and backward and backward because you're in flexion all the time. You're bending yourself forward. See if I can make that even make any sense. If you're bending yourself forward, then you're pushing the disc backward, and then eventually you'll hit that nerve. Now, the one thing that you need to understand about the nerve is that nerve pain distribution, when you hit a nerve that's from a bulging disc, it has specific nerve roots. And you could go on Google and you could just Google lumbar nerve root distribution. And it will show you on that exactly where that disc is and how that disc it will show you where, if you bulge L1, it's going to come to the top of your groin. It's going to come around the top of your hip, and it's going to come around into the top of your groin. If you bulge L2, it's going to go into the bottom of your groin. If you bulge L3, it's going to come across the top of the front of your thigh. If you've got pain coming around the front of your thigh, if you put your hand on your thigh and it's coming around the front of your thigh, then that's the L3 nerve root. And then if you come around the front of your thigh and you just follow your hand right down the inside of from your knee to your ankle, just right on the inside of your leg, that's the L4 nerve root. And then if you take your hand and move it to the outside between your knee and your ankle, on the outside of your lower leg, that's the L5 nerve root. And then the S1 nerve root gets down there by your little toe on your foot. So when you say, man, I got this pain running down my leg, what I do is say, okay, tell me where is it running down your leg? And if you run across, man, it's coming into my groin. It's coming down the front of my leg. I feel it in my big toe, or I got this pain on the outside of my foot. Okay, now we know specifically that we've got some disc bulge involved that's hitting the nerve. And we got to get that pressure off of that nerve. We got to get that disc back to being forward. And how do we want to do that? We want to do that by getting ourselves up. We want to think in our brains, hey, I got to pick myself up, and I just want to set it back just a little bit. Like Not very much. I just want to think in my brain. I got to pick that vertebrae up. I got to pick it up, and I just have to tilt it backward just a little bit. And it's like if I had, I don't know if a good example. Let's just say I had a piece of ice. This is going to be a little gross, but hang on. All right. I got a piece of ice that's sitting on top of that vertebrae right there. And I want to take that vertebrae and I want to pick it up and I want to tilt it back, but I just want to tilt it back so that the water from the ice just barely runs to the back of the vertebrae. I don't want to lean so far back that the ice falls off of the vertebrae. I don't want to go that far back. I just want to go up just a little bit and then just move it back. Come up and just a little bit of extension. If you got a bulging disc and you've got pain running down your leg, if you can move up, you just got to think about it in your own brain. Think, I gotta pick this up. I gotta pick it up. I gotta grab L3. I gotta grab L4, and I gotta try to raise it up and just get on the back edge of it just a little bit. And that's where you got to stay. Now, when you get ready to bend, you got to make sure that you keep your abs locked into place. So I want to keep my abs hard. I want to keep my abs contracted. And when I bend forward, I want to hinge at my hip joint. I don't want to hinge in my lumbar spine. I want to hinge at my hip joint. So I hinge, but I do not I don't unlock my abs. I keep my abs tight and I hold that position and I lean. I got to lean at my hip joint and I got to bend at my knee, but I'm not going to bend my lumbar spine. Because if I bend my lumbar spine forward, I'm going to push that disc backward and it's going to hit that nerve and it's going to run down my leg again. And that's how you manage a low back problem. That's how you manage a disc bulge until you get the nucleus back to the middle and the annulus grows back. Now, if you've torn that annulus, if you've torn that outer shell annulus of that vertebrae, it's about a 3-month process of rehealing itself. So I had a patient yesterday, and she's got some low back pain, and she said, "Now I used to see that other chiropractor before I started coming seeing you, and he just quit and retired one day and came and brought me his whole practice, and that was probably somewhere around 2006 or 7. Nope, that was somewhere around 2010 or 11 or 12 when that happened, and so." And so this person's been somewhat related to my practice. Hasn't been a very consistent person, but they've been related to my practice since then. And during that time frame, she said to me yesterday, "Well, I had a bulging disc back when I used to see the other doctor. Do you think that could be my problem?" And I'm like, "No, your bulging disc in 2012 is not bulging in 2024. You got a whole now. You might have rebulged it, you might have re-injured that area, but that area is going to heal itself. Don't buy into this idea that I had a bulging disc when I was 14 years old, or 17 years old, or 22 years old, and now I'm 50 years old, and I've still got a bulging disc. That's not how it works. Your body is a self-healing mechanism. It's a self-healing organism. It heals itself. So, but you can re-injure it again and then cause it to not to function. So the disc you pick up and you get on the back edge and you don't go into flexion. Now, if you have low back pain, and it's running down the back side of your leg, like running down your glute, right down your back of your hamstring to the back of your calf, if it's running down that back side of your leg, in my experience, most of the time, we're not dealing with a disc bulge. What we're dealing with is the facet on the back of the vertebrae. We're dealing with facet jamming. And facet jamming, what happens when you have too much curve in your low back. That's facet jamming. That's a different, it's actually 180 degrees opposite of a disc bulge. Because the way that you correct the facet jamming, that's when you've got too much lumbar curve and you've lost your core strength and you've got too much lumbar curve. You've got this big head forward posture, and now your low back is trying to pull you backwards, and you've stood too long, like you stand all day long at work, or you stand too long at going shopping, or you're at a ball game or something like that, and you're standing too long, and it feels really good to like lean forward and stretch. Like when you put your hands on your thighs and you lean forward, that leaning forward, it feels really good. That's a facet. That's usually not a disc, because if it's a disc and you lean forward, it's going to hurt. But if it's a facet and you lean forward, it's going to feel better because you're going to take the pressure off of the facet joint when you lean forward. And that's what's happened. It gets stuck right there. And I always use the analogy of I love the picture in my mind of the luggage, return place where you pick your luggage up after a flight at an airport, where the luggage comes out of that, the middle of the section there, and it drops down on that metal belt that's going around, and it's kind of in a big, it's got all kinds of different designs depending on what airport you're in. But when it comes to a corner, it's got those pieces of metal, and those pieces of metal are just riding along there, going straight. And then when it turns the corner, those pieces of metal overlap, and they overlap. And then when they straighten back up on the other side, then they come back apart. But in the corner, they've made those little triangular looking pieces of metal where you get your luggage at an airport, and they kind of overlap in the corners. That's exactly in my brain what I think about when I think about a facet jamming situation. Imagine them going into the corner and then the two metals sticking to each other. And then when they come back out to try to go straight again, they can't separate. That's what I imagine in my brain happens with the jamming of the facet. And the jamming of the facet means you've got an increased amount of lumbar curve. A lot of people understand what it feels like if you just lay on your stomach on a big fluffy pillow. Some people could just lay on their stomach, period. Especially women who are heavy chested, and you lay flat face down and your shoulders come up just a little bit, or a man that lays face down and puts his face on a pillow, and then his belly kind of goes down into the bed. What you get is a backache right across like where the belt line is of your pants. You get a bilateral backache, and it radiates down the back of your legs. That's a facet jamming problem. So when the two ways that you deal with those things is, for a disc, you got to make sure you're up and back. But for a facet, we actually want to slouch just a little bit. And we don't. So the lumbar curve, a normal lumbar curve, when you measure it on an x-ray, is supposed to be 40 degrees. And that's our epigenetics that we had from last time. So a lumbar curve, and I'm just gonna draw a curve. And let's just say that curve, if we measured it out, is 40 degrees. Let me do it this way. Let me erase this. So I'm just going to make a curve. I'm going to make an arc. Just for you guys listening on the radio, I'm just going to make an arc. And let's just say that's a normal curve. Okay? But if you have not enough curve, it kind of flattens itself out. So the normal curve is 40 degrees. And then a flatter curve, let's say that's something like 24 degrees. Okay, well, now a flatter curve is going to put pressure on the disc. But then let's get a really big curve. And let's say that this curve is 52 degrees. Well, Those are, the one in the middle is the normal, the one in the front is the flat, and the one in the back is the increased. The increased one is where you get the facet jamming on the back, and the flat one is where you get the disc bulging in the middle. So when you sit down in a chair, you want to push your hips as far back into the chair as you possibly can. I mean, like, push your hips all the way back into the chair. Jam the bottom of your butt, the top of your butt, into the little crevice that's in the bottom of the chair. And then set yourself up. That is going to increase lumbar curve. That is going to take this 24-degree curve and make it closer to 40, which is going to increase the curve, which is going to take some of the pressure off of the disc. On the other hand, it's going to increase the curve, which is going to jam the facet. So it's going to jam the facet. So when we come back, we'll just finish up this thought, and then I got one other thought I want to talk about, and then maybe we could talk about Dr. Perlmutter's book. So you guys stick with us. Come back. We'll be back with Life with Jason Clemmons right after these messages. Okay, so these three situations. If you have a disc problem, which is the one in the front, if you have a disc problem, you want to increase the curve if you can. Now, if you lean back and it creates pain, obviously don't do that. That means the disc has bulged so much that now you're pinching on it, and you really need some decompression. You need to pull that disc apart where you're pulling in this direction first. You need some decompression to allow a negative pressure inside on the disc, which sucks the disc back to the middle. And we've got decompression in the office. So if you need to get decompression, you can call us, and we've got a table. And so we can help you out with decompression. Think about it the other way. If you have a facet jamming problem and you have the pain running down the back of your glute into the back of your thigh, now what you want is you want to be able to flatten your curve. So now you need to slouch a little, but you're actually not slouching. I don't know if I'll be able to say this properly. We're taking 52 and we're moving it towards 40 by flattening out the curve. When actually slouching is when you go from 40 to 24. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. If you've got a normal curve and you bring your hips forward and you flatten out the curve, now you're actually slouching and putting pressure on the front of the vertebrae and pushing the disc to the back, and that's not good. But if you're hyper curved and you've got a 52-degree curve, and now you need to move your hips forward in your chair just a little bit. Just slide your hips forward. It kind of now let your lumbar spine open itself up just a little bit. Now you take 52 and you move it down towards 40. You're not actually slouching. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So that's the two different themes. Let me get us back on the air here. Okay, this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. Thank you guys for listening. We're trying to discuss some back pain issues and some disc problems. And just so you know the difference between when you're dealing with the disc and when you're dealing with a facet, and the difference between the two. And you want to open up the facet. You want to open it up by like bending forward. You can put your hands on your thighs and lean forward. I always like to get in a hot shower, let the water run over the low back, and then lean forward. And let's see if I can stretch that little airport metal where we get our luggage. If it sticks together, I need it to separate back apart. And that's, if you can get that facet to separate, it just automatically is almost just like quits hurting. I mean, you could get 70% reduction in pain just like in one moment. Just just by opening that facet. It just takes the pressure off of it, and then the pain starts to dissipate, and then the swelling gets out of there, and the heat and all that sort of thing, and it starts to go away. And that's what happens with facets. So just so you can kind of have some sort of self-maintenance about that, that's what that whole thing is about. Those two things right there. All right. That's all I'm going to talk about on that. I want to talk about one more thing just real quickly, and then maybe we could get into the Dr. Perlmutter's book, because I got asked about this today, and I want to just to tell you why. And it's one of my main men said, "Hey, I just need a quick refresher course on this," and so I'll just give you a quick refresher course on it, and then we'll get to the book. I want to talk about the cell wall, and I want to talk about the phospholipid bilayer, and all that. It doesn't matter what that means. It means it looks kind of like this. There's like a ball in a straight line, and a ball in a straight line, and that wall is made up of something that looks kind of like that. You guys on the radio can just imagine. You put a circle, and then you put a straight line, and you kind of make a phospholipid bilayer, and it means that part of those are hydrophilic and part of those are hydrophobic, meaning one half of it likes water, one half of it doesn't like water, and so it makes this little bilayer. And you can imagine that a cell has that bilayer all the way around. Well, there's things that make up that phospholipid bilayer. There's multiple things. It's like an entire ecosystem, really. If we really were to break down every single part of it, it's very complicated, but it's got a lot of stuff. But one of the things that it has is it has omega-6 fatty acids. And omega-6 fatty acids are what make it rigid. And it also has omega-3 fatty acids. And omega-3 fatty acids make it fluid. And I know we've been over this, but we're just going to go over it again. So just like my shirt has thread. It has a thread count. There's a certain amount of thread in this shirt. And if I blow through my sleeve, and if you guys are wearing a shirt right now, if you're not wearing a shirt, you should don't be doing this and enjoy whatever it is you are doing. But you probably ain't watching my show. But mostly probably everybody that is watching the show or listening to the show has a shirt on. So just take your sleeve and blow through your shirt. You can blow, you can feel it when you blow through your shirt. I can feel the air traveling through my shirt and hitting my arm, which means I have enough thread count in my shirt to make a shirt that covers me up. But I also have enough fluidity. There's enough openings between the thread to allow things to pass through. I could actually spit through my shirt, and I could feel little particles of spit. I know that's gross, but whatever. That on my arm, right? If I poured my glass of tea through my shirt, I would get tea on my arm, right? So omega-6s are like the thread. Omega-3s are like the space between the thread, and it gives us enough rigidity on our cell wall to have a cell, but it gives us enough fluidity to be able to bring things back and forth inside and outside the cell. We can transport things. We can have things flowing in and out of the cell that we need inside the cell, and we can have enough cell wall to have a cell wall. I hope that makes sense. Okay, if you're going to build a shirt that has enough thread count to give you a good solid covering, but it has enough fluidity to give you to be able to breathe a little bit. Like if you had a leather jacket on and you tried to grab your sleeve on your leather jacket and blow through the leather jacket, you couldn't do that. The leather would be so thick that there would be no air that travels through to hit your arm. If you had a big old heavy sweatshirt on and you tried to blow through that sweatshirt, you wouldn't be able to get that air through the sweatshirt, right? Okay. Inside the human body, what we really would love to have is we would love to have omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 1 to 1. That would be ideal. That means we would have a 6 and a 3 and a 6 and a 3 and a 6 and a 3 and a 6 and a 3 inside that cell wall. That's really what most people in the business believe the way human beings were for a long, long time. Thousands of years, we were at a 1 to 1 ratio. We could even really get by with a 3 to 1 ratio. From that 6-3 ratio. The average American, according to my main man, I'll think of his name in just a second. He's the guru of omega-6-3 medical doctor. I'll think of it in just a second as soon as I quit trying to think of it, because my left brain's trying harder than my right brain is, and my right brain knows the answer to the question. But the average American person is 25 to 1 in their omega-6-3 ratio. So 25 6s to every 1 3 is like having a leather jacket cell wall that is impenetrable nearly. It's just really difficult to get things through the cell wall, okay? And the reason that's important is because inside the cell, there's a mitochondria. And the mitochondria makes ATP. And the ATP is the power of the cell. Just like last night, the storm knocked out the power to my building. And when the storm knocked out my power to my building, I lost my show. Like I was live, and then all of a sudden, I wasn't live anymore. I mean, I was still live, but you guys couldn't hear me because the show was over because I didn't have any power to my building. Imagine my building is the cell, and inside my building, there was a power plant. And as soon as somebody knocked out the power plant, the building is just dead. It's like, there's nothing to do in here. There's no power to this building. That ATP is the power to the cell. You got to have power to the cell. That's why I'm so disgusted with metformin. Because what does metformin do? Metformin, that's the way you spell it, I don't even know. Metformin actually destroys mitochondrial respiration. So if this cell is responsible, the job of the cell is responsible for releasing glucose back into your bloodstream, what they have figured out is, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we just destroy the mitochondrial respiration in the cell? Why don't we flood the cell with so much metformin that it just clogs up the entire respiration of the cell? So now the cell malfunctions. It malfunctions, and now it can no longer release glucose into the bloodstream. So now your blood glucose goes down. That is the biggest bunch of crap that I've ever heard in my entire life. Let's destroy the liver cell function in order to get the blood sugar to go down so that we can still eat our donuts and drink our Cokes. That is just that's the insanity. Okay, didn't mean to get passionate about that, but that's just crazy as heck. Okay, never mind metformin. Let's go back. Let's calm myself down. Let's draw our cell. Let's put our 6s and 3s in there. Let's put our mitochondria in there. And now let's make our ATP. Okay? Every time we make a ATP, we also make a free radical. And the free radical is going to attack the mitochondria, just like metformin does. It's going to attack the mitochondria. And if you get enough attack on the mitochondria, you will get mitochondrial dysfunction, which will lead to programmed cell death, which in the science world they call apoptosis. If that mitochondria gets damaged to the point where it can't function, you will end up with programmed cell death, and you'll end up with the killing of that cell. And cells put together equal tissues. And tissues put together equal organs. And organs put together equal organisms. Right? Okay. We got to protect our mitochondria. It's vital that we protect our mitochondria. And how do we do that? Antioxidants. Antioxidants block free radicals. Antioxidants are like those big old good-looking guards and tackles we got that stand up there and block those crazy defensive linemen and give us quarterbacks a chance to throw the ball. Those antioxidants are like our offensive line. They'll just block those lunatics over there on defense and keep them away from me so that I can do my job. That's what an antioxidant is. And every time we make an ATP, we make a free radical, so we better have some antioxidants to stop this process. And the granddaddy, the all-American, the number one granddaddy of all antioxidants is glutathione. Jimmy Gutman, MD, told you, as soon as my left brain let my right brain work, I would remember. Jimmy Gutman, MD, taught me all this stuff in 2009. Glutathione is the granddaddy of all antioxidants, and it's what stops free radicals from attacking mitochondria. And if you want to be healthy, you got to have good mitochondria. And that's the way it works. Okay. How do you build glutathione? You build glutathione from amino acids that you get when you eat proteins. And those amino acids have to travel through that cell wall, and they have to be assembled inside the cell to make glutathione. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So, if it has to travel through the cell wall, do we want a 25-to-1 omega-6-3 ratio? Do we want a leather jacket cell wall? Or do we want a 3-to-1 or less omega-6-3 ratio, which gives us a nice firm cell wall that has plenty of fluidity through it, that we can get those amino acids through that cell wall and get them into that cell and assemble the glutathione and stop the free radicals from destroying the mitochondria? Yes, that's exactly what we want. So how do we get our omega-6-3 ratio, our omega-6 to omega-3, if it's 25-to-1, how do we get it down? We get it down in two ways, and mostly one way, but I suggest two ways. Number one, stop eating omega-6 heavy diet. Stop eating these large numbers of omega-6s. What are peanuts? 4,400 to 1. Do peanuts have some good value? Yes, I'm not saying peanuts don't have some good value, but they're super high in omega-6s. Corn chips are 84 to 1. Soy is 283 to 1. Those are high things that we eat that are vegetable oils, corn oils, right? All that high fructose corn syrup, all those things that are high in omega-6s is one way that we can help regulate our 6-3 ratio. Another way that we can regulate our 6-3 ratio is to increase our amount of omega-3s, which is fish oil. That's what fish oil does. Fish oil balances our 6-3 ratio. It balances our cell wall composition. It allows for amino acids to travel through and assemble into glutathione, which protects our mitochondria from free radical damage. That's my story. I'm sticking to it, and until somebody teaches me something that's wrong about that whole thing, I'm sticking to it. That's one of the smartest things I know about health and wellness. And for all the people in the world that will not take their fish oil, then you guys can deal with your own inflammatory, jacked up mitochondrial selves yourself. And give me all the excuses that you want to about why you won't take your fish oil, because the pills are too big, or the pills are too little, or they make my tummy hurt, or whatever the thing is. Go ahead. Don't take your fish oil if you don't want to. Deal with mitochondrial dysfunction. See how that turns out for you, because I promise you, hell on earth is headed your way. That's what I know about that. Okay. That right there is why we take fish oil. It's because we got to keep the power on to the cell. Okay. So it's very important. I'm just passionate tonight. This Thursday night passion night is what this is all about. I didn't even know I was going to get that passionate about this stuff. But that right there is super important to how and why we take omega-6, the omega-3 fatty acids. The other thing is, inside the omega-3 fatty acid is two parts. There's EPA. I got asked to break this down today, so that's why I'm breaking it down. There's EPA and there's DHA. EPA is anti-inflammatory. DHA is for your brain. Helps brain synapses. That's what we want. And when we take it, in my world, we want a 2-to-1 ratio of EPA to DHA for adults. For kids, it's opposite, because kids don't have near as much inflammation, but they need that brain synapsing to build all those brain synapses that they're building. So it's opposite. But for adults, we want it in a 2-to-1 ratio, and we want DHA to be a baseline of 1,000 milligrams, which means our EPA is 2,000 milligrams, which means we're taking 3,000 milligrams baseline of omega-3 fatty acids on a daily basis. That's if you're healthy and you want to maintain health. If you have rheumatoid arthritis, go up. If you have schizophrenia, go up. If you have bipolar disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever your thing is, any sort of arthritis, inflammatory problem, go up. How do I know this? Because Dan Murphy had polycystic kidney disease, and he was a twin. And his twin had polycystic kidney disease. And so Dan thought, let's take more fish oil and see what happens, because I have this suspicion that if we got our fish oil high enough, our polycystic kidney disease would go away. So Dan went to 6,000 from 3,000. Then he went to 9,000. Then he went to 12,000, but his brother didn't. His brother said, you're crazier than a loon, and I'm not taking any more fish oil. So his brother stopped at 9,000 milligrams a day, and Dan went to 12. Then Dan went to 15. Then Dan went to 18,000 milligrams of fish oil today, and at 18,000 milligrams, his polycystic kidney disease went away. He finally got his 6:3 ratio to a point, and he finally got enough omega-3s inside those cell walls to reestablish proper mitochondrial function and get the inflammation out of his body, that his polycystic kidney disease went away. And Dan told me that in 2009. He's been teaching me neurology. He teaches me neurology too, but he also has been teaching me nutrition since 2009, way before all these gurus were talking about omega-3 fatty acids. Way before these books were written, Dan was teaching me this stuff way back in the day, right there. I can't tell you how important omega-3 fatty acids are to all of your disease processes. They're just vitally, vitally important. I just truly believe that. Omega-3 fatty acids are vitally important to getting your cells healthy, and that's the overview of what I know about 6s and 3s. So, I got asked to cover that. I hope I covered it passionately enough, and I hope that's a review for you so that you understand it. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis, which someone is going to say is an autoimmune disease, but then if you have MS, someone's going to say, well, that's an autoimmune disease. I challenge you to go read Terry Wall's book. Dr. Terry Wall, W-A-H-L, I believe. Dr. Terry Wall. We've covered the book. Yeah, Dr. Terry Wall. What is the name of the book? The Walls Protocol. WAHLS. The Walls Protocol. Dr. Terry Walls. She had MS. She was in a wheelchair. She's a medical doctor. She said, there got to be a better way than all this medication crap that they're giving me for MS. So what did she do? She started eating a paleo-type diet, increased her omega-3 ratio, or got her omega-3s up, started quit eating that, and guess what happened? She's still living. She's kicking her. Right, here's a picture of her right here. That I'll just share it with you, just in case you don't believe me. I know you believe me because you love me and you love watching this show and you just love the information that we share with you. Of course you do. I totally understand that. But there she is right there. Here she is. Where'd she go? There she is in her wheelchair with MS in October of 2007. October 1st of 2007. There she is in her wheelchair. What'd she do? She quit eating crap and got her 6:3 ratio better, and she got nutrients in her body that gave her body a chance to heal itself. And then what happened to her? Like, yeah, here's her on her bike. That's a great picture, side by side. Yeah, that's her in a wheelchair, that's her on her bike. Because she started eating that's an autoimmune disease. That's your body's mistakenly attacking itself. Let me tell you something. That I don't believe that with 1 ounce of my being that your body mistakenly attacks itself. I think your immune system is created by God Almighty Himself, and I think your immune system is 100% perfect 100% of the time. I think your immune system attacks something inside your body that we haven't been able to see. I think an autoimmune disease is the body attacking something for a reason. It's because the body's in an environment that's incongruent with health. And I've got lots of evidence that says that. Do I treat MS? Absolutely not. Do I treat lupus? Absolutely not. Do I treat rheumatoid arthritis? Absolutely not. Do I try to get you to put the cell in an environment that's congruent with health? Absolutely. Every single day. That's what I try to do, is get you to put yourself in an environment that's congruent with health and get yourself out of an environment that's incongruent with health. Because when you put your body in an environment that's incongruent with health, your body will create disease to let you know that you're in an environment that's incongruent with health. Right? If my child runs out into the middle of the street, I will chase my child down and bring him back over, and I might even swat him on the butt and say, hey, don't get in the street. And the child's going to cry. They're not going to like the symptom that goes along with playing in the street. But I'm trying to tell them the street is a bad environment to play in. Because if you play in the street, you might get run over by a truck. That's the way the body works. If you put the body in an environment by eating crap, drinking alcohol, drinking sodas, eating a bunch of processed foods, never getting any sleep, don't do any exercise, and then all of a sudden your body creates some sort of disease process, it's doing that because you have yourself in an environment that's incongruent with health. And if you just would stop and put yourself back into a healthy environment, your body would a lot of times get rid of that disease. Man, that was great. I don't know if you guys enjoy that. That might have been a little bit too intense for some people, but what the heck? It's Thursday, and we'll come back tomorrow night, and we'll try again to get to Dr. Perlmutter's book. I apologize for being so passionate tonight, but that's what you get. That's the end of the show. If you have any questions, comments, if I can help you out, send me a text, 806-794-0400, or send me a message on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, and I'll try to get to them. And you guys have a great evening, and I'll be back tomorrow night.